Hi, I'm Xanthe Huynh, and I'm here with Anime Impulse.
Blah, 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 blah.
So before I go into a recording session, I usually like to warm up my voice. Usually because I have like an hour and a half drive to the studio. I spend that time warming up. I have a warm-up CD in my car. And usually afterwards, depending on how rough a session it is, if it involves a lot of like screaming, yelling, dying, then I try to warm down my voice as well because it helps to kind of minimize tension that's in my vocal cords. So those are the things that I try to do before and after a session. The Sailor Moon and Tuxedo Mask, or Shaoran and Sakura. So when I've been cast in something, I'll usually try to Google the title of it if I know what it is, and if it's like available to view on like Crunchyroll or something, then I'll try to watch through as much as I can before I go into record. There's been a lot of times where I'll look it up and there's nothing, and so you just kind of have to be open-minded before you go into absolutely anything, because that's anime. The main difference between voicing for an anime versus a video game would be that anime is a lot of dubbing to picture. So you have the lines that are written out, and a lot of times like the writers try to make it match the mouth flaps. It's the same thing when you're reading it or acting out the lines. You have to kind of read and kind of like scoop up and down to like the video feed to make sure that you're matching it every time the mouth opens and such. For video games, there's usually a lot more freedom to act as however you like. Well, a line that I enjoy in Persona 5, and like one that a lot of people ask me to quote all the time in the Valentine's Day scene, she basically says, "Please take my chocolates before I crush them." Continuing to train is a good idea. Practicing is a great idea. It really helps to build up confidence, and that was something that I seriously lacked when I first started. I had major imposter syndrome. I still get that even now, depending like the project and if I know who else is on the cast list with me. Practice is really important. It only helps, and like the more confident you are, the better you'll be at putting your best foot forward. In Persona 5, I romanced Haru Okumura. Because I had to. And also I was curious as to how like a lot of the recordings sounded in the final product, so I went her route because I love me. But I guess in New Game Plus, I'm thinking about romancing Hifumi because I think she's really cool too. I am following My Hero Academia, and I'd love to be in it if I can. Every role I get really excited about working for, but there's been a couple of times where I was like, oh wow, I've been cast as in Sword Art Online. I'm playing Sachi. Oh, I'm playing Sachi. Oh no. You know? For Haru, it's weird because I was cast, but I wasn't told what I was doing. In the email, it just says, hey, we have a video game we'd like you to come work on. Please come in. And I come in, and they had me like sign all these NDAs, and then they were saying, by the way, we're working on Persona 5. And I'm like, oh, okay. Cool. That's one of those instances where you just jump in not knowing anything about what you're doing, and you know the director and the producer kind of fill you in. Those are the first two that really come to mind where it was not what I expected, or I don't know. Like one of the hardest things I've ever done was for Madoka Magica Rebellion, and it's where I voiced Bebe, and she speaks a mix of gibberish and random cheese names, and all the gibberish was phonetically written out. And you know, you don't get the scripts ahead of time when you do dubbing, so you're going in, it's my first time reading this line, and like I have to like make sure I say all the consonants and everything correctly, and it's to match this picture of this little doll that bounces around on screen, and she's got the tiniest little mouth, and I'm like trying to read it, and then you have to like convey the emotion along with the line even though it's gibberish. So the director would kind of be like, okay, it's kind of like she's saying this is the intent, this is what she wants to say to this person. But instead of actually saying it with words that we would understand, she's speaking in her own language. You know what? That's so weird. I've never been asked this question. The only time I try to think in a voice is if it's with an accent. And that's only because I'm trying to think of like, is that the right way to say it? Is that the right cadence? Is that the right pronunciation? So there was this one time we were recording for Blood Lad. During the recording, they told me, oh, we have clients that are coming in to look at the studio, try to see what it is we do before they, maybe want to work with us. So they might come in during your session. I'm like, oh, that's fine. That happens all the time. So I went through my session, and like about halfway through when we were taking the break, they were like, okay, when you come back from break, they're gonna come in and just kind of listen to you work and see how the engineering side and everything else works together. I'm like, cool. So we go in and, when we do dubbing, we go line by line. So we skip through all the other sections and go to the next line, the next line, the next line for each character. And so when we got back in, we skipped to the next scene, and it is the only naked scene in the entire show. And my line was, where are my clothes? Why am I naked? I'm like, oh, no. This is not a head tie, this is not a head tie, this is not a head tie. But I don't think it like really speaks, say anything about me. I'm just doing my job. It may give them a weird impression of the studio though, because that's where they just happen to come in. Things within the script, the actors have no control over. Things like name changes and like jokes in Japanese that just don't work in English that have to be reworked and changed so that they make sense for a Western audience. Things like that. As an actor, I have no control over that, and I work with what's given to me. And also, I feel like people don't realize how hard it is to dub because there's so many technical aspects to it. It's not just about having the acting ability and like the voice that matches the character, but it's also that you're able to sustain certain emotions because you say a line and then they stop and they like try to work it so that it matches like the lip flaps. And then sometimes you'll get direction to do the line again, or you'll move on, but then you have to kind of like latch on to like the ending of the last thing that you said and move on with that emotion so that you don't sound like you're starting with an emotion, then you're like starting again with the next line and starting again. You have to kind of make sure that the emotion flows through correctly for that scene. And that's also like something that the director helps you with as well. And in voiceover in general, it's not just about being able to do voices. It's more about like your acting ability and your training. That's really important that you have in your belt before you start in voiceover. I had tons of anxiety going into that audition, and at the time, they had you memorize the monologue that you picked out. So you couldn't have the paper in front of you, and so I got up and I said 3 words, and then everything vanished. I could not remember the next few words, so I just started like mumbling for a little bit, and then it came back, and then I was like, yes, okay, I'm gonna continue, and I did it, and I finished. It's funny because like the only note that I got from the judges was that, oh, it was a little hard to understand you in the beginning, but the rest of it sounded great. I'm like, yes, thank you. I'm glad that it went well, because that could have quickly gone sour. Thank you for watching my Q&A. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at It's Xanthe. So, hope to talk to you guys soon. Bye!